Okay. Well, excellent. So, my name is Brian, or Forgotten, Forgotten Sec on Twitter. Talking to you guys today about kind of the next generation of InfoSec, which I'll get into a little bit more in 1 second. So, Forgotten Sec because security is always forgotten in a lot of environments, especially what I do right now. Graduated from some schools, went over to SourceFire, did some stuff, ended up in a bunch of different industries, spending a lot of time on Snort and network security monitoring and hackerspaces because I run one, and conferences because I run two, do a lot of other random projects, so lots of different fun things. Also, spent a lot of time learning about learning, which is kind of a fun meta conversation. And that's kind of what we're focused on today. So we all hear about kind of one of the problems is that we, as an industry, are short, and the number varies depending on who you ask, but 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 people who have the skills that we need to fill the job roles we need. And part of that problem stems from the fact that people don't actually write the correct requirements for the job. They may have someone in HR writing the job requirements, or a manager who doesn't understand the technical needs of the role, or the company doesn't understand the technical needs of the role. Those are all very common issues. Kind of the other side of it is that the pipeline, the building of InfoSec professionals right now is kind of broken. And that's what I'm mainly going to be focusing on today. So a lot of people go through various degree programs, high school programs, come out with some interesting background knowledge, but a lot of times don't get that hands-on experience that InfoSec demands to be functionally useful. And there's quite a few categories of InfoSec when it comes down to it. Trying to pin them down is kind of fun. So obviously you hear a good bit about digital forensics and incident response, network security monitoring. It's all becoming much more popular as a topic. Threat intel, can't spit and not hit two at any conference trying to sell their feed. Pen testing, which probably has the most resources available because everybody thinks pen testing is sexy. And it's a lot of fun when you break into your first computer, ethically or not. I would recommend ethically because that's obviously a good thing. But getting that experience of understanding how exploits work really helps to do any of these tasks. Reverse engineering, everybody I know in reverse engineering is looking for more reverse engineers. There aren't that many who can survive that training, they go into that speciality. Compliance, which a lot of us hate because, well, it's documentation, it's I won't say non-technical, but the focus is more on legalities than it is technical specificity. There's a ton of generalists, tons of organizations will have the IT security person, or it will be part of a job. And then vendor and solution developer, the folks who, I've got this product, let's talk about how to make it work in your network and how you'll pay my company money. And then there's research folks and other unique snowflakes that don't fall under one of these categories. I was talking to some downstairs who do kind of the building or researching methods to do some of these other things. So researching some threat intel-like stuff to try to identify attackers and how to detect them. So that was just one example. But there's a ton of different categories, but which of these really have a structured learning opportunity? For most of these, compliance, obviously you read the book that details the compliance and probably take some law classes because a lot of lawyers get involved when lawsuits happen with compliance. But for the rest of these, there's not really a structure or a lot of training available. So some of the other fun things, diversity. We kind of have a very focused field with a lot of white males, which is a thing. So there are some programs out there to try to help some other groups. Girls Who Code and Cyberjutsu are two who focus on girls or ladies. Cyberjutsu also has a women's side of things. And then there's also some other groups. They were really, really hard to find. Even in a couple hours of just Googling around and Twitter and whatnot, I had a lot of actual fun finding them. I know, for example, there's a Hispanic InfoSec professionals group, but couldn't find a website or any details on it anywhere. I know it exists because I've spoken to a member, but finding any actual information was failing miserably. Also, there's military groups that are designed to help folks make the transition from, I was in, let's say, a grunt or a Navy guy, or one of the other groups that kind of did more of the, maybe classified stuff, but not necessarily IT in any way, shape, or form, trying to make the transition after they get out. Well, a lot of folks tend to choose IT and InfoSec because there's a lot of opportunity. And there are programs, again, to help those folks develop. Finding them is not simple. A lot of times on the outboarding from the military, they have some of those available. These were some of the ones that I found in a few. Would help if I actually had the right slide up. So, Girls Who Code Cyberjutsu was two of them, and then here are some others that are more focused around veterans. Except for the bottom left, that was just a really good description of what happens with the transition. Trade in military boots for nice shoes for moving more into an office or IT environment. Although, realistically, those look like dress shoes, so probably not as much that. But it was an interesting article on the transition. There are groups that are designed around preparing veterans who are moving out of the service into more of InfoSec, but again, they're kind of hard to find and not easily available. So then we have KidsCon. This is a program that was actually started by MIT about 5 years ago now, and these are some of the local HackerCon, or not all local, but some of the HackerCons that have embraced the idea of having a kids-focused event at a HackerCon and kind of start teaching some of those skills earlier. And then there's a ton of opportunities that are driving InfoSec skills down into earlier ages. Actually, a couple that have actually pushed into the middle school area. There's been high school for about the last 10 years, or I want to say it's 8 years for Cyber Patriot, which is one of the inherit and defend type exercises hosted by military, the Air Force Association combined with one of the government contractors. One it was Northrop Grumman, but might have been Lockheed or one of the others. I don't remember offhand. But Air Force Association is kind of the prime on that. And then basically they give students from across the country in machines they have to defend and harden. So kind of getting that basic hardening experience, security experience. In the high school level, I want to say they had 1,800, 1,900 teams last year. And then the middle school, they've taken over one school district out in California. And I know they're looking to expand that. The Robotics League isn't InfoSec, but at least exposes programming at a young age. NYU Poly has a couple of things on here. The Forensics Challenge is really, really interesting from the Computer Security Awareness Week program. And then they also have a Capture the Flag called CSOL CTF that also is there. And Carnegie Mellon has Pico CTF, again, a middle and high school focused challenge. Their US Cyber Challenge actually is a program where you basically take a test, but if you do well enough, you can get invited to the training camp. The training camp has 4 one-day versions, effectively what's a SANS class, and then a CTF on Friday. Again, that's completely free, so that was a really interesting program to go visit. Even though it's targeted towards college students, I know a lot of professionals ended up doing it anyway. So that's also out there. Cyber Ace is at the high school division of that. Unfortunately, they don't have a training camp, but they do have some online material. The National Cyber League is, I hate the word cyber, but National Cyber League was an interesting challenge. Just kind of exposed log analysis and forensics and some of the other skills, crypto, steganography, in a challenge that was targeted towards college students. And they put your name up on their website if you did well, which turned into a very strange phone call from someone finding a phone number for me from 10 years ago. MITRE CTF, I played a number of years ago as well, and a lot of companies are starting to use Capture the Flag and other challenges to drive education. Because as you play a challenge, you end up having to go research something that you didn't know coming in. It's pretty much a guarantee if you're playing the challenge correctly, you are going to end up researching something and learning about it. The other component is that after the challenge, you can go read someone's solutions on most of the challenges will have write-ups on what some of the solutions were. So you can actually learn solutions to problems, how they solved them, and where in your thinking you stopped and see what the natural progression to get to that understanding can be. Within academia, there's a few groups that target creating that cybersecurity training and education type environment. CyberWatch and CyberWatch West have money from National Science Foundation to do just that. They also provide courseware and whatnot. UTSA has a group that runs the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition and works with all the other ones. That's the CIS. And then they actually have a information security education conference. So teachers who teach InfoSec, a conference specifically for them with a horrible name called CISSE, C-I-S-S-E, or the colloquium is what the new logo is. I think that's a lot better because I think CISSE was a horrible name. But it was a really interesting conference to go here and see what people were doing. The biggest takeaway was they need help. They want help from industry, and they're looking for us to get involved. So some of the other programs, more the online courseware, EDX is MIT and Harvard, Udacity is Google, Facebook, MongoDB, Cloudera, AT&T. Coursera is probably 50 or 60 different colleges and hacker high schools out there as well. Stanford Web as well, but their logo is transparent and pain in the butt. So I didn't get to that one. Some more lovely classroom materials. When I was giving a version of this talk at a local group down in Northern Virginia, he literally said, "Hey, I got labs on GitHub." And samclass.info and CryptoCity are the open sourcing of the course material from CryptoCity is Dan Guido of NYU Poly, and Sam's class, I don't remember what school, but I want to say it was somewhere out in the Midwest somewhere. And then I started a project on GitHub recently to start identifying some labs around network security monitoring. Again, going back to the fields I talked about at the very beginning, only one of those is really well represented for the open training that's available. Pen testing and red teaming, there's a ton of material out there, and we talk a lot about that at different conferences. But when it comes to defense, there's not been as much focus. For example, when you think of defensive cons, or hacker cons that focus on defensive skill sets, you really struggle to come up with naming a couple. So SANS is out there. Obviously, that's a little bit more targeted and a little more expensive. Security Onion Con and BSides Augusta are out there. But other than that, there really isn't a ton of other defensive-focused options. Or for any of the other categories I mentioned, the only other one is DFIR, Digital Forensics Incident Response. There's a few additional conferences specific to that. NOLA-Con, or BSides NOLA, I forget which. One, the two is very, very, very heavy in forensics. So, a couple other tools, obviously suggesting internships. Life Journey was kind of an interesting group that tried to map out what skills you need for specific jobs and create a path to actually getting into, say, reverse engineer. Yes, did you have a question? Yes, they're downstairs. Yep, Cyberjutsu Women definitely is out there. I couldn't find their logo when I was searching, but that's just because it was really busy. They definitely exist, and they definitely do good work. They're at a lot of cons, especially in this area. I've run into a couple of their members all over the place. But yeah, they're definitely out there as well. So Started Life Journey is they mapped out probably about 20 InfoSec professions, or excuse me, not that many in InfoSec, but a bunch of professions, and mapped out the steps you need to take and the resources you need to learn from to get to that role. Obviously, asking someone in InfoSec to be your mentor is out there, and there's been a number of open offers for that type of thing on Twitter. There's not really a structured program. Through some of the colleges there are, but it can be really hard to find someone, and also as a mentor, kind of advertising it is awkward. There's a couple of us who will just post out, hey, anyone want a mentor? Ping me on Twitter. Myself and a good buddy of mine, DA667, do that regularly, but there aren't too many that do. And it's not easy to be a mentor. It takes some learning as well. There's a group called CyberFed, which is completely not what it sounds like. They actually are the Cybersecurity Competition Federation. This was also based on an NSF grant to build out availability for information about information security challenges. So the idea was to try to link up the challenge authors with the academic community and with industry to help make the challenges more structured and more uniform. It's kind of still in its infancy. There's a very interesting podcast they're doing for that, head by a couple guys out of Cal Poly Pomona, Dan Manson and Jason Pittman. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I think they've done 30 or so episodes. Every college student, and I think high school students might be eligible for this as well, can get a free account on DreamSpark, which gives you access to a ton of software through academic licensing for Microsoft. This allows you to set up a Windows server and play with it, something that traditionally you wouldn't think to do, but is really, really important if you want to start working with servers. Well, how do you know how to use them until you've set one up, until you've played with it? Getting that hands-on experience is very critical to IT in general and in InfoSec. So going out and playing with that. A lot of colleges also have labs available. NYU Poly was just one example, but most colleges with InfoSec programs have labs. There are various groups that meet up from those. A lot of them are open to the public. You just have to go find them. Some of them are easier to find than others. So we get to kind of the crux of things. The big issue, and as I mentioned before, the big struggle that a lot of academia and that a lot of these programs have is that they need help from professionals to say, hey, I'm willing to do a presentation on X. Same is true of meetup groups, hacker spaces, colleges, high school programs. They all are really looking for help. A lot of the programs out there always struggle to find professionals to come in and speak. Ideally, a lot of those college club meetings will meet weekly or bi-weekly or so, sometimes even monthly, but that's normally more rare because they have the time at that point. And they need speakers to come in and talk about a subject. So most of the people in this room, I'm guessing, have a subject that they're pretty much an expert in at some level, or at least know well enough to talk about for an hour. So my call to action to you is go out and participate. Find one group in your local area and say, hey, Are you interested in having me come speak about something or talk to your membership? Whether that be a university, a high school, a meetup group, a local con, a hackerspace. There are tons of opportunities, especially in the corridor between Delaware and Northern Virginia. There is hundreds of different groups out there at different schools and meetup and all over the place. Take a look, please. Get involved. The pipeline that we have right now is very broken, and we're just starting to build out those resources to fix it. More people are starting to build out programs around learning all those various skills that I talked about in the very beginning. The skills that you need for the lovely job titles. And again, this wants to be angry and not friendly. I hate PowerPoint some days. What is going on? So, anyway, as we go through those lovely fields, most of them do not have structured training. So another way, if you're not, say, the person who is comfortable speaking in front of a group, as seen by Heidi this morning, some people really struggle with that. Although she did an awesome job, you could see panic. For those folks, there's opportunities still out there. So for example, the UMBC GitHub that I posted earlier, or I'm sorry, UMUC, as well as my own, the project is to try to build out labs for something that I do on a regular basis. So for example, taking a look at a PCAP and looking at a particular type of event, researching it. Literally, as I go through my daily job, I'm documenting, this is what I did, although with non-work data. I go home, I'm in the process of taking an entire analysis of an intrusion event and running through the process tool by tool in my home lab and writing out the steps of what needs to be done and the answers and separating that out. That is what the universities need. A lot of the professors struggle because they'll have some experience, but it's really hard to have experience in everywhere in InfoSec. And a lot of the programs are taught by teachers who may have some experience in one spot, but not necessarily another. Even my college, where every high-end class, every 300, 400 level class, the teacher was actually in the industry full-time and teaching part-time. Except for, I think, 2 or 3, every teacher was actually in the industry. They still struggled with some of the functional aspects of some of the classes because things like, okay, wireless, where do we start? And again, while I talked about that lovely program or programs at the high school, middle school level, is as those develop, what we can expect when you start college, we can start to raise that bar. So for example, at CCDC, Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, every year people get a little better, a little bit more experience. So by the time they enter the challenge, or by the time they enter college, they already have some cybersecurity experience. So they're moving on to more advanced things. So you're going to start to see more advanced folks as you come in and entering groups. So as you build up that pipeline, the skills starting from middle school, by the time they hit high school, they're a lot higher level than just, I use AOL Messenger, nowadays Snapchat and Twitter and whatnot, to, oh yeah, I've participated in a cybersecurity defensive exercise. When high schoolers are starting to do that, by the time they hit college, well, I've done 5 or 6 of these. Now I'm going to play the college version with the next step of a live red team taunting me, basically, and having fun and providing a more challenging attacker. So as the skills at each level, high school, or middle school, high school, college, and industry levels up, the entire industry is going to build. But to get there, we need everybody's help to go out and start building up those programs. Building up the next generation, exactly what Heidi talked about this morning. This is a problem that we're having. We need your assistance. And I say we, I'm out there too. I just volunteer with a lot of stuff. So now that I've ranted for a few minutes, does anyone have any questions? No. That's fun. Yes. So in general, pretty much every aspect of building the InfoSec pipeline needs help. So that's the GitHub groups that are trying to write labs and create courseware. That's volunteers to actually teach at universities and community colleges and high schools on the side. So for example, part-time. That's volunteering to the cybersecurity clubs and speaking there or at local meetups. That's mentors for all of those groups and new professionals. That's everything. There's a shortage all over the board, which is kind of the problem. And again, there's a few folks starting to build up on that, but we need the community's assistance because there's a lot of students out there, and the number of mentors versus the number of people who need mentorship is a huge disparity. I can't have 20 mentors, or 20 mentees rather. Also, just because you have a mentee doesn't mean you can't be a mentor as well. There are some high school students who were mentoring some middle school students who are also receiving some mentorship from college students. Through the Cyber Patriot program, they actually ask for every single team they want a mentor who has some experience. In some cases, this was just college students who had played challenges. In others, it was folks in the industry. But there was a team that I ended up mentoring, and when they started playing, they had 10 people. By the time the organizer of Cyber Patriot linked me up with them about 2 months later, they were down to 4 people because they didn't have that mentorship and they struggled with just slides, just explaining what's the difference between a threat and a vulnerability. And the most basic of explanations, explaining slides that they actually provided, all 4 of those people were really excited to come back and play the next year. The problem is right now we're not giving them the encouragement. We need to get out there and assist, whether that be volunteering your time to in-person, online, whichever you're more comfortable with. Obviously, as I said, some folks aren't comfortable public speaking. Not a big deal. You can still assist. There's still tons of programs. Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, for example, uses volunteers as judges, as the folks who run the infrastructure, as folks who build the injects. I should probably explain that. So within Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, there's kind of a couple of things. Students inherit and defend a network that they know nothing about walking in, besides these are the operating systems and the base function of what I have. So they may get told you have a Server 2003 Exchange server, an Active Directory, domain controller, a web app running on Linux, a web app running on Windows. Good luck. So you can imagine that's kind of a fun exercise. Very similar to the Pros vs. Joes downstairs, except for in the college version, they also have business tasks they have to complete, such as go make an SSL certificate and put that certificate on your website and add it in the certificate store in all the clients. A task that reasonably you may do in your company today, but for a college student who's never dealt with PKI, is not something they're easily going to get, especially with the added challenge for Mid-Atlantic where they don't have direct internet connectivity. They have to walk 20 feet to the internet workstation. Doesn't seem like much, but the fun is you have a group of red teamers, including folks like Mubix, Rob Fuller, and Chris Gates, Carnal Onage, Raphael Mudge, Armitage Hacker, and all these other experienced seasoned pen testers who are working to gain access and control of the student networks and disable them at some point. Normally they spend the first day having some fun first and playing around, establishing persistent 7 ways from Sunday. But depending on what strategy the red team uses can change the exercise. Realistically, the red teamers always have a good bit of advantage. They get to bring in their own tools, they get to prepare, and it's stacked overwhelmingly against the students. But the students get to learn in an environment that I would still love to play in today, of inherit and defend a network where the repercussions of getting owned are darn, I lost points, versus, hey, I got fired, or my boss got fired, or my team no longer exists. Obviously, the losing of the competition or struggling is much easier. On the flip side, they also are offered, typically, if they do well, job opportunities, internships, which all the sponsors of the exercise end up hiring those students because they have that experience and have shown interest. The new trend more and more is that sponsors of cybersecurity challenges are looking for the students who are participating and saying, you really are dedicated to this field. You really have this extra interest, and you are showing up. You're showing up to something you're not required to and enjoying it. Maybe you're the right kind of person. In InfoSec, I would rather hire someone who has enthusiasm than I would someone with a little bit more experience any day. The person with enthusiasm will surpass the person with a little bit of more experience quickly. This is a constantly changing field. We are on a treadmill. If you stop, you're falling further behind. If you're not running fast enough, there is no fast enough. You always run a little bit behind because there's too much depth and breadth to this field that you will never be able to learn everything in this field. I would say it's a struggle to call yourself an expert in more than one discipline in InfoSec, because there's that much going on. In every individual field, there's constantly things going on. The reason why so many of us use Twitter is for that exact reason, because the news that we see, you hear about a breach, you hear about the newest exploit technique, the newest defensive tool, and sometimes you won't even know they're there until they've been around for a number of years and you happen to run into them at an event, or happen to find someone's blog post that explains exactly what you need, which is probably more common than finding it in a textbook. I don't think I've found too many structured things that I had a research question that ended up in a textbook. It's pretty much always someone's blog, or ask it on Twitter and someone says, hey, I wrote a blog post on that 2 years ago. Here you go. And that's honestly one of the best ways to find answers. Stack Overflow is another same type of response and communication, only more in a forum aspect of, who looking at that. So what we have is a serious need for your assistance. So please take the opportunity in your area, look for the groups that are out there, get involved in what you can. If you don't want to do it in person, go online, there's opportunities there. Yes, you had a question in the back? So every hackerspace is pretty much unique in a way. Some have more of a maker focus. Some are more into electronics, microcontrollers, programming. You start to get fewer and fewer. And as you approach InfoSec, there are still a few out there. Obviously, the one I run, Unallocated Space down in Maryland, we have a lot of InfoSec professionals. Pretty much every person who was a founder was in the InfoSec field. So periodically we'll have events like, we have an event called the MiniCon once every 2 months or so. Share something, 15 minutes to an hour. And I've had everything from writing my first kernel exploit to quick keys in VI to creating a theremin to a demo of knife and axe throwing, because that's the diversity in the technology community. At its core, the hackerspace world is very focused in whatever people happen to participate in that particular one. Given the diversity we have in technology, that can be all over the spectrum. And depending on which one you participate in, some will have a lot more InfoSec IT, some won't. Find one that does. If you're lucky enough to find one that does in your area, then it's a great opportunity. Sometimes just exposing different technologists to information security, things they don't realize. We host a lot of other InfoSec meetups, So OWASP Maryland has come to my hackerspace, participated. Similarly at colleges, sometimes they will host, say, OWASP or other InfoSec related groups. So it just kind of depends on figuring out the right thing for your area. Especially in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area, there are a seemingly infinite amount of groups to the point where you can't view them all. Literally, there are more groups every night than there are in certain areas. So it's kind of a struggle. Yes?
And don't get meetups.
Yep.
Not just groups, the meetups. They're different, like, we're all C programmers, and we're gathering at this bar, and we're going to drink, and we're going to talk code.
Yep. There's ones that cover just about everything on meetup.com is very popular, and a lot of groups will cross-pollinate. So, for example, you'll find people who are in multiple groups, and sometimes that can lead to interesting discussions, and you realize, hey, wait, you're into all the things I'm into. That's kind of interesting. Let's talk. Get into some interesting conversations with that. There's a lot of different opportunities here, and as I said, I hope you guys go out and take a look into them. Even if you can't contribute in person, any contributions you make, virtual, in person, make the offer. It's also a great way to get interns, because when your company wants to go get an intern, when you say, well, I've had someone who's really dedicated who asked me to be their mentor, and, you know, I think they'd be a perfect fit for this mentorship program. You've already vetted the person. You already know they have an interest. You already know what their skills are. That saves a lot of time and money on companies. When you think about the cost of sourcing someone, well, you don't think of an intern as necessarily someone you're going to spend a ton of time on, but when you think about all the time you spend interviewing 20 candidates, even if that's half an hour apiece, that's 10 hours you could have been working. So realistically, there is a cost to finding a good intern, and they become typically inexpensive employees after if the organization likes them. So it's a great way to actually pick good interns and get them into excellent positions. So that helps everybody, because companies like it when you have an intern that works out well. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Feel free to contact me. A little early, but it is what it is. I'm going to be building up the list of information. I'm also going to be posting these slides online. The other kind of co-purpose to this is when you find that person who asks you, what are the resources that are available? Now you have a place to go look, and you have an entire set of lists of all the resources that are available, different ways to search them, different ways to find them. Thank you.